Why don't you just talk about yourself? Tell us your story. I'm like, well, there's nothing I like better than talking about myself, so we're going to have a good 45 minutes here. So, let me talk a little bit about my story, how I got into this business. And the best way to illustrate this is looking at the young Chris on a farm. Actually, in all transparency, this isn't me, this is just something that we found on the internet. But it best illustrates being born on a farm. My father actually trained racehorses. I don't know if anyone else grew up on a farm. It's boring and it's hard work. I don't know, it's horrible. Right? My father just figured that he bred for free labor. I think that was the whole purpose of having children. So we were up at 4:30 in the morning, and we had to, of course, look after the horses. You have to feed the horses, you have to water the horses. But the one thing I can tell you that growing up on a farm does teach you is responsibility and hard work. Because when you have animals, when you have horses, you can't take a day off. They don't really care, whether you're sick or not. You have to be there, you have to feed them, you have to look after them. That being said, I hated growing up on the farm. It was a lot of work. I'm like, this work stuff really sucks. There's got to be a better way. And of course, my father, as I said, trained racehorses. So, and just for the record, people who train racehorses, they don't have any money. People who own racehorses, they used to have money. And then they gave all their money to the people who train racehorses. So there used to be these people hanging around the barn all the time. And there was one individual that used to come up all the time, and he fascinated me. He'd show up in the middle of the day, didn't seem to work. He drove a Mercedes. You remember those big phones they used to have? It was very impressive to a kid. The Zach phone, those huge phones. Lived in this big house, and I was fascinated by this guy as a young man because I figured work was digging ditches. So one day, I asked this individual, I'm like, what do you do for a living? I never see you work. You always show up here in like your casual shirts, you've got that big phone that nobody else has. What is it that you do? And he said, I'm a financial advisor. And I said, I have no idea what that is, but that's what I'm gonna be. And sure enough, it wasn't really, and again, for all transparency, that's not me, that's not my car, it's not my wife, it's not my house. I live in an apartment actually, but it's a really good picture on the internet. So, when he told me this, really what it struck me was, what did I really want out of life? And I wanted a better life, a good life. I had seen the struggles of working on a farm. I knew the hazards of working hard all the time, and it didn't seem like a good lifetime career. But the most important thing that really struck me was how much freedom this individual had. Freedom that he could make decisions, he could travel, he could work or not work, and this was very appealing to me. So when I got out of school, I started, of course, you know how most kids, their hero is like Spider-Man or Batman. My hero became Warren Buffett. I started to read Charlie Munger's books. I read anything I could get my hands on, I read about investing and financial planning. Mainly because I had no clue what it was all about. And I read book after book after book. And luckily, and serendipitous, when I got out of school, as I looked through the want ads, I saw this little tiny ad that said financial planning assistant wanted. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is what I've always wanted to do. I remember the dude with the big phone. He never seemed to work. I'm going to go do that. Now, little did I know, and I went there and I was very enthusiastic. And they said, yes, come aboard, my young friend. And I will supply you with all the leads. You just have to go, you have to call them and go see them. Of course, I was very excited. I joined the next day, went and bought myself a suit and a tie and everything. And he handed me the phone book and he said, here's the book of leads. Start calling them. But, you know what? I loved it. I loved it. I loved financial advice. I loved working with people. I love guiding them through the hazards of investing. If you've ever invested yourself, you know that it can be somewhat challenging at times. I love planning out their estates. I love working with their kids. I loved it. And of course, when you love something and you're passionate about it, the money just comes. And soon, we continued to build up this successful business. But even then, I thought, that's enough. And in fact, once again, a pivotal point in my life that I point to is if the person I wasn't working with wasn't such a unpleasant individual. I have different names that I'll use for him, but I'll say an unpleasant individual. Because one day I was having this conversation, which I thought was a conversation, and I was saying, you take pretty well 30% of my income. How about you buy a computer or something? How about you help me out in some way of building my business? And he turned to me and he said, I don't need a union telling me how to run my company. I'm like, union? Like, maybe you don't understand how your business actually works, but let me illustrate it for you. And it was at that point that I founded Investment Planning Council. And there is myself with no gray in the beard, with hair. And this was actually a picture that was taken when I met my business partner in actually Beaver Creek, Colorado, on a conference, a financial conference. And we both had the same ideals. We both wanted to build a company that was passionate about giving financial advice to Canadians, independent financial advice, and helping advisors build a better business. He had a business, I had a business, and we decided to merge those businesses together, and that was 20 years ago. And from then, we built up a strategy, and our strategy was actually quite straightforward. Our strategy was to buy our competitors. So there was two ways that we could look at how to build this business. One is we could continue to bring people in slowly, train them. But I thought, well, that seems like a lot of work. And as you've probably noticed, I'm not really into work. This might be a theme that is coming out. So I'm like, let somebody else do all the work, and then let's go buy all their companies. And in fact, over our history of Investment Planning Council, is when we moved into, in 2000, we moved into our first headquarters. By the way, at our first Christmas party, which I loved, by the way, our first Christmas party was actually held in my apartment. And my apartment wasn't that big. But by 2000, we had grown. We actually did 5 acquisitions in 2000 alone. Moved into our new headquarters. And since founding the company, we have done 26 acquisitions to get to where we are now. And these companies range in size from very large to very small, to sole proprietorships, to large corporations that we have integrated into our organization. In 2004, this was right after many people remember the tech wreck of the early 2000s and some of the recession that had hit. We know that we needed to take the business to the next level. We needed to reinvent ourselves as an organization. And also we knew we couldn't do it our own. We understood our weaknesses, and we also understood our circle of competence. And so at that time, we approached a much bigger company, which is IGM Financial, which is part of the Power Financial Group. And they became our equity partner. And they bought a majority interest in the organization. But more importantly, what they provided us was access to expertise, but more importantly, access to their massive checkbook, which really comes in handy. And from that, we continued to expand. At the point we did the transaction, we managed about $7.9 billion on behalf of Canadians. But then the growth really started. We had 100, we went from basically having a Christmas party in my apartment to having over 160 team members in our team. We continued. By 2007, we had reached 10 billion. And then in 2008, right before the recession hit, we were recognized we were flying high. And this is how you know that something bad is about to happen. So always remember this. When you are recognized by your peers and you win awards for what you do, a recession is about to hit. So there's an entrepreneurial lesson. When you won the Canadian Investment Award for the Total Client Experience, you know that you've hit your pinnacle and now it's time to go down. And we did. We went from $12.5 billion to $9 billion in less than 3 months. And that hurts. And now, it also provides opportunity, because when we went down, the equity value of the organization went down. And at the time, I actually went and borrowed money from the bank to buy back some of the company that I had sold to IGM, because I still believed in the founding philosophy and where we could go. And to that, we did another acquisition in 2010, which pushed us up to $18 billion. And our last acquisition, which is Independent Financial Planning Group, we have a portfolio management service, not to get into too many of the details, but it crossed over the $4 billion. It is now over $5 billion actually today. And we moved to $25 billion. And currently we're proud, we have over 300 offices across Canada. We have 800 advisors, and we represent 300,000 Canadians, and they're giving them advice and helping guide them through their financial success. And we moved into our new headquarters, and so now I'm nervous because you can see my partners over there in the corner. This year we won the award for the top wealth management company in Canada. So everybody start shorting your stocks, because you know a recession's on its way. I just won another award. And we are proud to say that we have 270 team members at our head office in Mississauga. So that's sort of the story. But people ask me, as an entrepreneur, if you can call me that, I call myself an opportunist more than I call myself an entrepreneur. What are you most proud of? There's a few things I can say looking back over the 20 years of building an organization that I can be very proud of, but the biggest thing, of course, is the culture. And I know everybody in here is an entrepreneur, small, medium, big, and it doesn't matter. The most important thing to a company is its culture, is what you stand for, is your language, is how you talk, how you interact with people, what you accept and what you don't accept. That's culture. Right? You accept integrity or you don't accept integrity. You accept joking around, which we do a lot of. There's a lot of laughing when you come up to our head office, and certainly anyone's welcome to do the tour and laugh with us. But that's part of the culture. The play hard, work hard philosophy has always been part of IPC from our founding. And that comes right from the top, by the way. One of our most important founding principles is celebrate the successes that you have, and to celebrate the successes that you bring to other people's lives. And that I can be proud of to this day. That culture permeates through the team. Great advisors. And I put this as choose your clients carefully. When you start out in business, who do you want as your client? Anyone will pay you, right? Anyone. Actually, they don't even have to pay you, right? Sometimes you got to fight them for that, but anyone. And what you learn over time is you're far better to focus on your attention on people who share that culture, who share your vision. Trying to fight your customer to do what's best, long term is just going to work against you. And our advisors are our customers, and we've had to go through a lot of culling. We've had to go through a lot of soul seeking through the years we've been in business to make sure that we are fully aligned with the same philosophy. Seeing opportunities. The one thing that, and I'm going to expand upon this more, is always, one of the things that we've always tried to do is never be complacent. When things look bad, that's usually opportunity. And in the financial industry, as you know, the financial industry goes up, it goes down. It's part of regulation. We get certainly world economies have effects on our business. World disasters have effects on our business. But most of these things always lead to a greater opportunity. Innovation. One of the things, again, part of our culture is try not to do what everyone else does. In other words, when somebody brings it to a table, what I don't want to hear is, well, this is what so-and-so does. We never want to compare ourselves to our peers. We want to set our own path. We want to think differently. If everyone's going one way, a good indicator that you're doing the right thing is go the complete opposite way. And although sometimes that'll take you down a path that you never thought you would do, but if you do the tried and true and follow the herd, eventually, once again, you will just be like them and everybody else. And the one thing that also blows me away and I have to be the most proud of is the team. Now, once again, we've established a theme. I'm not a big worker. I don't like working. I like thinking and talking a lot. So the team does most of the work. And I can tell you that when you're an entrepreneur, and this was hard for me when I was A-type personality, is I thought no one could do anything better than me. And what I found out is everyone can do better than me at everything. There is always somebody better. In fact, one of the greatest lines I've ever heard is when you do something you hate, you're depriving somebody else of doing something they love. And that was a lesson, and now I have a whole team of people who do everything I hate. And as you've heard, I hate a lot of things. So I like thinking and talking, so those are really the things. Because at the end of the day, all companies come down to one thing. It really doesn't matter what you make. It doesn't matter how innovative your product is. It doesn't matter how well priced you are. In my view, the one thing that it always comes down to in business is people. The people you surround yourself with, the people who are your customers, the people who are your suppliers. If everybody is on the same page, you can accomplish anything. It doesn't matter what your business is. And as you can see by just looking at the pictures, not one of those was about anybody doing any work. So that's sort of what we do at IPC. So over the years, what have I learned? Ask me as an entrepreneur, what have you learned from running a business, from buying businesses, from integrating businesses, from launching new product lines, and we've launched many new product lines in our day. The first thing is only focus on a few key things. Here's what the other thing that entrepreneurs like doing. Everything. Right? We like doing this, we like doing that, we do this. Here's a great idea. Why don't we get into this, and then we'll do that, and we'll do the other thing. Right? We're like, that dog in that movie where he sees a squirrel. Right? We're going down a path, it's going really good, and squirrel. And I did it. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs do it as well. They get very distracted. Over the years is you can only do very few things very well. Focus intensely on those things and outsource the rest. Only do what you can be the best in the world at. And if you can't be the best in the world at, get somebody else to do it. That's my advice. And I've learned that the hard way. Again, after doing 26 transactions, I can also say, learn to listen to your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, even if it looks great on paper, don't do it. I've also give you another piece of advice. I have never seen a business plan proposed to me or a proposal that didn't get me a 20% return on my equity. It's like a magical number. And yet we all know together, don't we, that they don't always get 20% return on equity. In fact, that's very rare, isn't it? Right? So in other words, if you fall in love, the numbers always justify it. But if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't fit your core, if there's just something that you wouldn't do, the most amount of money I have ever lost have been on deals that I knew were bad and went ahead with them anyhow because I fell in love with the transaction versus what would it do to my core business. I've also learned this with 270 people. People are unmanageable. You cannot manage people. Anyone ever try to manage people? Anyone in here? It's fun, eh? It's great. People are great. You cannot manage people. People do their own thing. They have their own way of doing things. Here's what I've found over my years of entrepreneurship: manage objectives. Just tell people what you want and let them figure out how to get you to it. Micromanagement kills. You can't manage people, but you can manage objectives. In fact, we're a very big component of 40X. I don't know if anyone's heard of the 4 disciplines of execution. If you go to our office, we have a scoreboard for every team in the company. And that scoreboard is what activities need to be accomplished for the ultimate objective. Since we have implemented that, we have seen our productivity rise in the double digits and our profitability rise over 22%. When we tried to manage people and manage processes, it failed miserably. Manage objectives and let people figure it out. And going back to this, and I feel very thin because as entrepreneurs, we like to just make huge extrapolations based on very little data. I did. I know a lot of other entrepreneurs also do. You know, we get a few people say this, and then we go raging down some road. And I've done it many times. What I've learned is measure and listen. Very much about keeping score. And the one thing that everybody wants, myself included, is we all want to play a winnable game. And the only way you play a winnable game is to keep score. The other thing is always listen to your customers. Right? They will not always be right, by the way. I know there's an expression, your customer's always right. I think Steve Jobs might disagree with that statement. And the customer's not always right, because if you ask somebody, you know, if you ask somebody who had a horse and buggy, what they wanted, they'd want a better horse and buggy. However, listen to what their unmet needs are, and that's where the opportunity provides itself. So, somebody else asked, so what about the next 20 years? You've been 20 years in business. If you had to look forward, and this can go in my business, and it can go in most businesses. Now, I have something by my desk, which is this saying. And I've seen it time and time again, especially as you move from that small company to medium company to large company, especially as you make the leap from medium company to small company, or sorry, from medium company to large company, evil lurks in places you would never imagine and tries to charm its way into your life. Does anyone know what this evil is that haunts entrepreneurs and haunts businesses as they try to make the leap being a bigger organization? Any guesses? Complexity. Instead of being really good at a few things, what do we try to do? We take that success and we create complexity. Look at the financial industry. For those who are familiar with the financial industry, and specifically the mutual fund industry, anyone know how many mutual funds there currently are offered in Canada? Anyone want to take a guess? 4,000. I have 4. 10. It's 24,000. 3 times the number of stocks in the TSX. That is complexity. That complexity leads to what? Complexity leads to regulation. Complexity leads to overhead increases. Complexity leads to client complaints. It leads to lack of accuracy. Complexity is the evil that entrepreneurs must fight. Because it's easy to make things complex. It's hard to make things simple. And in the next 20 years, I know that we will continue to focus on getting rid of that complexity. Because what happens is you get so caught up in complexity that your business can't change and adapt to the new world that's occurring. And I have a perfect example. Does everyone know this story? It's a pretty famous story now in the annals of business, but it's one that we should take seriously. In fact, in our boardroom, we say, was that a blockbuster statement? They're actually now a descriptor of thinking old school. Now, for those who don't know the story, I'll quickly say, everyone knows Netflix, everyone knows Blockbuster. Netflix actually offered to sell themselves to Blockbuster for $50 million. Not once, but twice. Now, if you were in the boardroom at Blockbuster, you had the successful chain, one of the top companies and fastest growing companies in America, what do you think that discussion went like? It went like, I know my customer. I got all these stores. They love driving. Who love driving to the store? They love the help of getting a video. They love this huge selection of videotapes that they can rent. They love buying overpriced popcorn. People love this. Why would people want videos delivered to them? Remember, this was when Netflix was delivering it by mail to people's houses. And 3/4 of our revenue is late fees. Doing away with late fees? What are you guys, nuts? A mere 10 years later, Blockbuster doesn't exist. As of 3 days ago, Netflix had a $43 billion market capitalization. Imagine that board of directors looking back on that. Now, can you blame that board of directors at Blockbuster? No, they had complexity, they had infrastructure. They got too tied up in the way that they think business should have ran. And that's all my lesson would be if I had to give any advice to any entrepreneur, is you always have to think differently about business. If you get into any business, look at what everyone else does and do something different. My favorite line is to reinvent your bad self. If anyone hasn't read this book, Innovator's Dilemma, has anyone read Innovator's Dilemma? Well, if you went to Harvard, which I didn't, by the way, I got excused from school, but it is required reading for all Harvard MBAs now. Clay Christensen is the author. And simplicity equals disruption. And basically this book is about disruption and how industry after industry after industry has been disrupted. Has anyone ever seen the movie Other People's Money with Danny DeVito? Go back and watch it in the context of dilemma. In other words, the disruption of the New England wire and cable, you can tell this is my favorite movie, by Larry the Liquidator. And his speech was about obsolescence. Looking back is not what's going to take you forward. This is required reading for all entrepreneurs. Because complexity, according to Clay Christensen, equals unnecessary cost. That unnecessary cost needs to be passed on to the consumer. Somebody's going to come along with a simple solution without those unnecessary costs as a low price provider. This is happening in the world at a higher and higher velocity. I arrived here on Uber today. Did anyone else? Disrupting the cab industry. Why? Because they have complexity in their business with unnecessary costs being passed on to the consumer that they don't have. Airbnb, all these fights about Airbnb. What that is Blockbuster going to the politicians and crying like little babies because they can't compete based on the new reality. The new reality is the new reality. Complexity to simplicity. And this is probably my favorite line from Clay Christensen, the author of, is customers don't buy products, they hire a product to do a job. That took me a long time to really absorb. Right? Because we, of course, have a sales strategy, we have a segmented sales strategy, we segment our clients based on how we're going to approach them, how we're going to sell them. But we were looking at it from the wrong lens. We were looking at it from our lens on how we were going to sell to our clients, as opposed to looking at it from the lens is, what is the job that our clients need to hire us to do? And once we put that lens on, it changed the whole approach that we had with clients. So entrepreneurs of the future, good. So I'm trying to think if I had to give once again any lessons in the entrepreneurs of the future in this new digital world, in this world of disruption, in this world of fast, in this world of getting rid of complexity. Is there some life lessons on entrepreneurs that will always be there? And I can't stress this enough. Focus on creating value through your service offering, not your product. Even if you have a product, the service around it is what people remember. What I call the wow. Okay? How do you stand out? Or what they call Ted Matthews. I don't know if you've ever read any of Ted Matthews' work, but he says that you want to be remarkable. In other words, you want people to remark about you. They don't remark about your product. They remark about the job that it fills and the experience around that product. What is the unmet of your industry, and how do you provide it in the simplest form? Tailor your business models around the needs of your clients and the demands of your clients. As I said, there are many demands that we just assume that they have as opposed to them hiring for us for a job. And of course, I can't stress this enough, always deliver an exceptional client experience. As boring as anything that we may do, it's the experience that people remember. It's the little wow factors. And of course, and I talked about this before, measure, and adapt. Never be stuck with our own ways, always looking to adapt. And to summarize, as I said, many people have different heroes, Spider-Man, Superman, and such, Batman. None of those were my heroes, but Steve Jobs was one of my heroes. And he's my hero because this line, again, means a lot to me, because I've seen it so dramatically powerful in the business, not only that I've created, but the industry that I am in. And it's one of his mantras: focus and simplicity. Simple can be harder than complex, no doubt about it. You have to work hard to keep your thinking clean and make it simple. But I can tell you, it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to my little story. I'm on LinkedIn if anyone ever wants to find me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or mentor or whatever you want. That's the only way to find me, because I never carry a card because they cost money. Anyhow, thank you very much. I'll be around for questions.